Clay Travis and Buck Sexton, funniest name of all time, by the way, Buck Sexton, talking about the athlete that Trump, I suspect, will call trans.
With you, and you took her out on the course. I know you've been playing with her a great deal. Before we get into the Olympics in particular, if you found out that she was going to have to compete against men in golf, you know the difference. There's ladies' tees for a reason. There's a tremendous difference. What would you say as a grandfather, leaving aside the being a president, running for president, all of those things, what would you say, you're a big sports fan, just about being fair, if you found out that your supremely talented golfing granddaughter was having to compete against?
I hate that, like, transphobic people are completely in the wrong here, and they've just, like, hallucinated that a cis woman is a trans woman, and they're still doubling down on the fucking narrative regardless. You know? They're still just like, even if she's not trans, who gives a fuck? Fuck trans people. That's basically what this argument is.
Well, golf is different. It's first.
What about the they say what I think people? I heard that about Trump all the time working at a gas station. Great fucking take. That's the other thing I was going to say. Republicans legitimately think in their minds that everyone else thinks like that. That's why there's always this narrative of like, oh, he's just honest. This is exactly what everyone is thinking, but are too afraid to say it. No, motherfucker. It's not to that degree, okay? And even then, oh, people are too afraid to say these things, but they're thinking it, means that they're still not saying it because they understand ultimately that there's a massive fucking subsect of the population that consider that to be abhorrent. Hello, that's the whole point.
First of all, it's a huge disadvantage anyway, but golf is a lot different than being punched in the face like that young lady from Italy was today, where she took 2 shots and she said, I'm out of here. I never got hit like that before in my life. And she was supposed to be a very good boxer, but she said, this is crazy. But golf's a little, because you still have to be able to putt and other things. But even in golf, you know, there's a big difference in distance. That's why, as you said, better than anybody. That's why they have the ladies' tees and the men's tees and all of that. So obviously it's, you know, a big part of what I say. One of the things that gets the biggest applause, just about, and it's I have other things that are very important, like the border. We got to close the wall. You got to drill, baby, drill, all of that. But one of the things that gets the biggest applause, and you know this because you've been to many of the rallies. I had a great one in Harrisburg.
Yeah, this is a great way to fucking, again, smell your own goddamn farts. Okay? Even he has been like shocked at how much people love the anti-trans sentiment at his rallies. But those are motherfuckers at his rallies. That is not the broader electorate. Okay? These are, it doesn't mean anything other than the fact that your fan base is brain broken. Okay? If you lean into that too much, you are going to end up looking like a fucking freak, which is why a lot of people, which is why the Republicans are weird narrative has been salient.
Last night, it was unbelievable, actually. And what gets the biggest applause is we will not allow men to play in women's sports. And, you know, I usually use weightlifting as a good example. You could use swimming. You could use a lot of different, but weightlifting is so good. But I think it's been replaced by boxing because this young lady said, I've never been hit like that. It was like getting hit by a horse. So, I mean, she took 2 punches and she said, that's it. I'm out.
What do you think about Kamala Harris? It's incredibly coincidental because today Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have rewritten Title IX so that it now includes gender identity. So if a man wants to identify as a woman, as you just mentioned, that thing has gone viral. Everybody is reacting to it. They wouldn't let that person fight as a woman because it didn't fulfill the biological requirements. Man beats up a woman in the Olympics. What did you think when you saw that video?
Well, this is where they've been. They've gone, you know, into the whole thing with men can do anything they want. They can go into the locker rooms. They can do whatever they want. They transition. And that's where they've been. And people don't understand it. To me, you know, I say we run a campaign on common sense. The Republican Party and MAGA is.
That's why the weird narrative sticks so well. Because Republicans do really well when they talk about common sense. This is just common sense. Of course, we have to look. Teenagers' genitalia or shit like that. Even though obviously focus group testing has shown that transphobia in and of itself is not successful, but when paired up with the concept of fairness in sports, it's actually very successful. And that's the reason why they changed it from bathroom bills to like, trans teens in sports or whatever. Even then, not enough people care about it because at the end of the day, there aren't that many fucking trans people. There's just not. It's like an entirely marginal group of individuals. So consistently fucking talking about trans people blah, all the time, non-fucking stop, trans people this, trans people that, they're in every corner, is going to make you look weird and gross. Ultimately, the average American also doesn't really care about women's sports that much. And especially the people that are talking about trans women competing in women's sports. They definitely don't give a fuck about women's sports. We are half of your audience. I'm scared. I'm like actually so anxious as a trans person watching this. We are half your audience. I wouldn't say trans people are half my audience, but I do have a big percentage of trans people in this community for sure. Thanks for your talking points. I just destroyed a transphobic family member of mine, Lamar. They were yapping about this nonstop. Even though they're obsessed with trans people, is what he's saying doesn't make sense. What? No, dude. Americans care about fucking inflation, okay? And maybe some of them also are terrified of the fucking border because it's a narrative that has no counter messaging to it. But at the end of the day, when you're constantly fucking talking about like teenagers' genitals and how they're being chopped off or whatever the fuck, people are going to be like, dude, that is weird. I don't want to think about that. Please shut the fuck up. Like, think about it this way. Conservatives are so dialed into culture war panics that they negatively polarize themselves against being normal. One of the greatest indications of this was during the fucking Super Bowl. This is supposed to be the Super Bowl for conservatives, right? It's something that every American is supposed to celebrate. All the normal Americans watch it, right? Hundreds of millions of fucking people tuning in from all around the world even, but especially in America. And conservatives were fucking crying. Why? Because Taylor Swift is there. Why? Because Taylor Swift's boyfriend is playing. And they weirdly just they weirdly turned around and fucking negatively polarized themselves against normal shit. Okay? And when you're chirping about the Super Bowl, you think the average American is going to be like, hell yeah, you're right, brother. Taylor Swift is actually a government psyop made to trans children. And that's why I'm also boycotting the Super Bowl. No, they're going to be like, shut the fuck up. I'm eating jalapeno poppers and watching the fucking Super Bowl, you un-American piece of shit. Okay? Like, you think right now at this election cycle, like when these dumb fucks talk about like Dylan Mulvaney being on a goddamn Bud Light beer can, you think that shit is like salient as a talking point? You think people give a fuck about that? No, of course not. And it's the same exact story with the Olympics, okay? This is a global event. A third of the entire population of the fucking planet watches the goddamn introduction ceremony. Conservatives in America are crying about how gay the Olympics are and how anti-Christian the Olympics are. Most people all around the globe are just watching and going, okay, the French are being weird. Who gives a fuck? Okay? What are we doing? They can't even enjoy the Olympics without getting angry. Okay? That is a mentally unwell person. I'm trans. Do you really think that the majority of America isn't transphobic? Where are you getting this from? I never said that. Of course. No, transphobia is deeply associated with our rigid understanding, our false understanding of gender. People don't see it as a social construct at all. They think it's like biology. They don't understand that there's a difference between biology, or whatever people call biological gender, versus being trans or gender expression in general, or what gender is in general. That's number one. And number two, because of that close association we have with our identity and the rigidness in which we have been taught from an early on age, people are obviously like, oh, trans people are weird and gross for the most part. That is like the normative position. That is the broad position of the majority of Americans, the overwhelming majority of Americans, right? They don't make a distinction between sex and gender, and it doesn't even matter. Most people think, oh yeah, trans people are kind of weird, kind of gross. I don't get it. Okay? The difference, however, is that no normal person is constantly fucking thinking about the latest and greatest in the happenings of trans culture and trans community existence. Okay? That's my argument. The average American is not constantly fucking thinking about like what a trans influencer is doing. The average American doesn't have like, anti-trans memes on their phone where they go, see, I have 500 videos of trans people screeching on my video. I'm on my phone. I'll show it to you right now. Like when you do that, people go, brother, what's that, brother? That's what they say. They're like, dude, you're weird. Caring about something that much, no matter what the cause is going to be off-putting regardless. Okay? Love you, King, but I think your idea of the average American normie is influenced by your friends and environment. WeHo normies are more chilled than Alabama normies, in my opinion. Oh, my God. No. Not only are you wrong, you are demonstrably wrong, because running an anti-trans agenda is exactly what led to the 2022 electoral defeat for many Republicans when it was supposed to be a fucking red wave. Okay? That's it. These guys already tried this shit, okay? And there are exit polls. People were literally polled on this, where they asked them like, how big of a factor in your consideration was like the fact that trans people are taking over the country or whatever. And people were just like, what? I don't understand. I don't care. That was abortion. It wasn't just abortion. Okay? Abortion played a big role in it, certainly. But some might make the argument that abortion is also a continuation of the Republican radicalization in this country, and how genuinely off-putting that looks to the average person. You feel me? Normal transphobes don't obsess over trans people. Yeah, it's not an oxymoron. Yes, there are plenty of people who are just normal and are like transphobic in the sense that they will be like, yeah, I don't think men should play against women. I don't think trans women should play against cis women, right? Like there are so many people who believe that and will just regurgitate that. Okay? That's an uncontested narrative. It's very difficult to fucking fight back against that. That is just the average person's take. That's it. But it doesn't go beyond that. Okay? When you start pushing arguments about how like, and that's why we have to stop them, and that's why we have to pass a legislation that will impact only 3 trans girls in high school swim meets in the entire fucking state of Kansas. Okay? When you do that, people are like, what? Okay, what the fuck? Why are we doing this? We are extremely online. We are motivated by what we see online. And unfortunately for us, especially with Twitter becoming increasingly more right-wing, most of the things we see are from groypers. So we literally fucking personally think that like every American is like a groyper. And that is exactly the problem with the Republican Party. They think that. They think that they're normal. They are not normal. They are weird and off-putting to the normal person. Okay?
It's about common sense, probably more than it is about being conservative or anything else. It's common sense. We want to have a strong border. We want to have low taxes. We want to have good education. We don't want to have men playing in women's sports. But this is where they are. The whole party is crazy, and they took him out. They did a coup with him, and it wasn't a friendly coup. It was a vicious coup. You know, he had all the votes, and they just said, we'll do it the easy way or the hard way. And they took him out. You know, from my standpoint, here we are working against him. He's down for the count practically. And it's like if you had a fighter like Dana White, the great Dana White. You have a fighter, and he's not doing well, and you take him out, you put somebody else in. But I don't think she's going to do well because her policies are so bad. I mean, she wants open borders. She wants the all-electric cars in a very short period of time. No more gasoline-powered cars or hybrids or any of that. It's just ridiculous. The country looks so stupid to the rest of the world.
When you hear yourself and J.D. Vance called weird by Kamala Harris, who believes that a man should be able to win a women's boxing championship, that a man should be able to be a women's swimming champion. We had Riley Gaines on the show earlier. Who's the weirdo there? What's weird? Actually letting men pretend to be women and win?
You are, bro. You are, for thinking about this and talking about this nonstop. You are the fucking weirdo. Like, you're weird. By the way, 47% say conservatives are weird. It worked. Wait, what? Why can't I see the...
Championships, or just saying women's sports should be played by women?
Well, they're the weird ones, and if you've ever seen her with the laugh and everything else, that's a weird deal going on there. They're the weird ones. Nobody's ever called me weird. I'm a lot of things, but weird I'm not, and I'm up front.
Oh, he's mad. Oh, that's awesome. Yet another, put that in the W category, put that in the W column once again. Okay. It's just not, there you go. He is definitely big mad about this shit.
And he's not either, I will tell you. JD is not at all. They are. I mean, who wants to have open borders? We're prisoners. That's weird. We're prisoners and we're...
That's weird. No, it's the other side. Here, I want to give you guys another argument. I want to go back to this fucking psycho.
Now?
Okay? The psycho who's like, said this, right? How much you want to bet every single person with a blue check mark that's fucking responding to this person is like incredibly grouped up and most likely one of those like Orange County style of Republicans, like Republican in a deep blue area, Republican living in a fucking deep blue district, Republican living in a deep blue state. Okay? Every single blue check mark. The take we're all waiting for. Host of Brianna M. Show, corporate media escapee, quit Fox Corps over the COVID vaccine mandate, fluent in sarcasm. Okay? Missouri, you better vote for this woman. First Amendment, Second Amendment, America First, MAGA conservative. Holy shit, I fucking love you. America First. Adaptation expert, natural selection always prevails. Gen X, father, teach your son chivalry. Think long, think wrong. Traditional thoughts. The truth, no matter how harsh it comes across, is still the truth. First time there's a Missourian in the fucking post. There are derogatory words for every race, religion, class, sex, etc., etc. I don't try to use any of them, and I expect politicians to do the same. As a Missourian, this post lost me. Look at the top blue check on this one. Israel has you leashed like a dog. Why you got to show me that, man?
Mental institution patients are taken out of hospitals and jails, and they're let into our country. That's weird. Who would want that policy? Who wants
That's
the men
weird.
and women's sports policy? Who wants to quadruple your taxes? The whole thing is weird, and the way they do elections is weird. And no, they're the weird ones. But you know what it is? It's a soundbite. You've been watching it. Russia, 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 Ukraine, Ukraine, Ukraine. It's all a soundbite. And the press picks it up. Do you notice the evening news? Every one of them talk. You know, they introduce the word weird, and all of a sudden they're talking about weird. No, we're not weird people. We're actually just the opposite. We're right down the middle.
I don't know if you heard this yet, but a little bit earlier, Joe Biden. I don't know if Joe Biden knows anything. I think you kind of showed that when you knocked him out on June 27th and ended his political career. I know you saw me on Jesse Waters. I mean, we've never seen a knockout like that, talking about it. And I know you posed as he dropped out. But he was just talking about Russian hostages. And he said you didn't get Evan Gersovich back, even though Evan Gersovich didn't become a hostage until he became president. I want to let you hear that and hear what he said. I mean, his brain's mush. We know that. But I want to let you hear it.
President Trump has said repeatedly that he could have gotten the hostages out without giving anything in exchange. What do you say to that? What do you say to President Trump now, former president?
Why didn't he do it when he was president?
Okay. I mean, how crazy is...
Dude, I love Donald Trump being like, Republicans are not the weird ones. It's the Democrats that are weird ones, which is why I, as a normal person, am spending my morning talking to fucking Clay Travis and Buck Sexton about a Algerian boxer in the fucking quarterfinals beating an Italian boxer, and we are talking about how she might have a penis in her pants, okay? Like, that is not I'm running for president shit, okay? That's insane. Like, you can't, like, that's actually super stupid.
This.
Well, he's incompetent, and you know he was so adjudged by his own. If you take a look, his own counsel. If you look at the prosecutor, we call it a prosecutor. They call it a counsel, and he came out and he said, with respect to the documents case, he said essentially that he's incompetent. You know, that was an interesting thing. He's incompetent to stand trial, but he's allowed to be president. That's a very interesting thing. Can't stand trial because he's grossly incompetent. But
fascinating.
No, I heard that. I heard he said this. Why didn't Trump get him out? And he was taken during that time. You know, I got out 59 different people, 59, and I didn't pay money. You know, once you do that, these deals are going to happen more and more because the amount of things, including cash, that we give up is so astronomical. This is a big deal. And they allowed some really rough people out. You know that, right? And they did in the first case of Brittany Griner also. They allowed, what was he? The
Merchant of Death. They traded her for the Merchant of Death, which is maybe a worse trade than our friend Herschel
one
Walker
of the greatest,
back in
the greatest.
Trans people shouldn't perform in opposite sex competitions? Yeah, they shouldn't. They're not. Trans women participate in the exact same, is in a competition with cis women. Like, yeah. Ain't nobody out here being like, oh, a trans woman should go fight against a cis dude. You know what I mean?
Greatest arms dealer in the world, you know, and look, these are rough deals. To make these deals, sometimes you have to be different. But we got out 59 without having to pay. I got people out of North Korea. You don't get tougher than that. And
last question.
Okay, I'm done with this. This just sucks. All right. I want to see the fallout from Trump's comments attacking Harris's race.
To serve on her campaign, to volunteer. So they're feeling very good about this. And the strategy, from what I hear from them, is let Trump be Trump. The more that the American people see of him doing this kind of stuff, the more they're reminded of why they don't like him.
Ashley, let's look back at the past to sort of widen this out here. President Trump did perform better than expected with black men in 2020. And that campaign would very much like to peel off a few more votes from the black community. How much does this hurt those efforts, though, in your opinion?
Well, I've always sort of felt like this was overhyped. The number of support among black men for Donald Trump is really been overhyped. It was never a real threat to someone like Kamala Harris. It was more of a threat to Joe Biden. But now that Kamala Harris is actually in the race, we're seeing their internal polls are showing that she's really invigorated the African-American base, where Joe Biden was bleeding support among the base. She's plus 45 against Donald Trump with the base. So the more and the more that he actually shows himself, the more and the more he insults her, the more he mispronounces her names, the more that he leans into really insult the entire black community, the more the momentum will start to create and galvanize behind Vice President Harris. And I will say, and it's not just among black people who are offended by the former president's treatment of her. So that's the other benefit that she has, that race and gender are working to her advantage in this particular race in a way that it never has before.
Ashley, I'm not black. Fact check, true. But I'd like your observations on the combative nature.
We still love you.
I'm glad we're good on that. I'd like your evaluation of the combative nature of the exchanges between former President Trump and Rachel Scott. That's playing in that room, but it's also playing in a broader American living room.
Bro, white people can never be normal. Like, I don't know why white people are so, like, it's just so difficult for a white person to ever be normal about like black issues, or just like being around black people in general. It's not even like, he's not even being like racist or anything. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not saying he's being racist. He's just being so cringe. Like, he just can't, I don't know.
Absolutely. I mean, there was a lot of frustration I heard from my reporter friends that were in the room, and that frustration and disappointment and how NABJ handled this spilled over into outside of that room. In fact, I got dozens and dozens of text messages about how disappointed they were that they provided the former president this platform to not only insult black journalists, but the black community, and to insult Kamala.
HasanAbi's race switching again. Are you with us or against us? Yes, dude. Whichever one allows you to subscribe at the top of the hour so you don't see a fucking 3-minute ad break, okay? That's what I am. Because at the top of the hour, I'm serving ad breaks to everybody, okay? Black folks, white folks, brown folks, Asian folks. Everybody's getting a 3-minute ad break at the top of the fucking hour. Unless you subscribe. Subscribe folks will not be seeing an ad break at the top of the hour. Here it is.
Kamala Harris as well. So, I mean, you know, the way that I think people are processing this is, you know, it's more of the same with Donald Trump. No one was
possible. Like, you invented a way to be racist to white people, but like specifically from Appalachia. It's crazy. You called Trump Hitler, dog. Like 3 years ago. You're a tech bro, a hedge fund guy from Silicon Valley. You're Peter Thiel's blood boy, and now you put on a fucking plaid shirt with the cowboy patterns, and you walk the border to be like, oh, I'm such a yokel.
Which audience she's in front of. I think it's totally reasonable for the president to call that out, and that's all he did. I mean, look, she's running as a tough on crime prosecutor, even though she implemented open border policies. She's saying that she wants to support the police, yet she wanted to defund the police just 3 years ago. It's totally reasonable to call out the fact that she pretends to be somebody different depending on the audience she's talking to.
You used that word chameleon yesterday as well. You're someone who was an unabashed critic of the former president previously. Now you're his running mate. You're someone who have text messages out there now that say, I hate the police. Now yesterday you said, I back the blue. By your own standard, are you a chameleon?
Look, I criticized Donald Trump 10 years ago, and we've talked about it, and I've made a good argument to the American people about why I think he was a great president and why I think he deserves re-election. That's different than going to Georgia 2 days ago and putting on a fake Southern accent when you were raised in Canada. So I think it's totally reasonable to change your mind. Has Kamala Harris stood...
When you were raised in what? Was Kamala raised in Canada? I thought she was from Oakland. Oh, she went to high school in Canada?
stood for a tough debate with you and explained why she wanted to ban fracking and now she doesn't, or why she wanted to defund the police and now she doesn't, or why she wanted to open the border but now she doesn't. It's reasonable to change your mind. It's not reasonable to run and hide from the media and not answer the American people's questions.
He was also asked yesterday if you were ready to be president on day one. He kind of dodged the question. What do you still have to do as his running mate to prove to him that you are ready to step into that role?
Well, I think Donald Trump was answering a political question, and he was answering it correctly. He said for years that who the vice president is doesn't really matter politically. Most Americans are voting either for Kamala Harris or for Donald Trump. They're not voting for the vice presidential nominee of either party.
Oh, my God. He's so cooked. He's like, I'm a fucking loser, but I promise I won't actually have a negative consequence on the ticket. I know I'm a fucking loser. I know my place. I'm sorry. This is great. No, I promise that like all of the articles that keep coming out about like every Groyper podcast that I've been on where I said things like we should assassinate women that don't bear 8 children, or that personally, I think that we should do a second circumcision or whatever kind of weird shit that he's an advocate for. All of those sound bites are actually good. I promise I'm not going to cuck the campaign.
Look, I'm absolutely ready to be president on day one. I've been a businessman. I've been a United States Marine. I've been a senator. I can do the job, but politically, he's just right. People are voting for Donald Trump primarily.
So why are you out here today then if you aren't necessary to this process?
Well, I didn't say I wasn't necessary.
Oh, bro, this guy is just ripping him, bro. Chill.
To the process, I can certainly make an argument that borders are Kamala Harris has failed the American people, but I think ultimately they're going to be voting either for Kamala Harris or for Donald Trump.
Do you have a reaction to the news that just came out about the prisoner swap that will bring 2 Americans back home potentially?
Look, I think it's great news, at least what little we know. We certainly want these Americans to come back home. It was ridiculous that they were in prison to begin with, but we have to ask ourselves, why are they coming home? And I think it's because bad guys all over the world recognize Donald Trump's about to be back in office, so they're cleaning house. That's a good thing, and I think it's a testament to Donald Trump's strength.
You've explained at length your past criticism of the former president. I'm just curious, though, is there still an issue where you feel like you are on a different level than him, that you feel like you are hoping to sway him on if you were to become his vice president?
Look, my job as vice president will be to help implement the governing agenda, and if, God forbid, something happens, to step into the gap. But Donald Trump's very healthy. I think he's going to be a great president. He's going to be a great president for 4 years. But my job here is to help prosecute the case, let the American people know what Kamala Harris actually is, what she's actually done, and then when we get in the White House to actually help govern, that's what I'm going to focus on doing.
So there's not an issue where you two differ at all?
Look, certainly we're going to differ on issues from time to time, but my job is to provide counsel to the president in private and then try to help him govern and do everything we can to help him do that.
Got it.
Your reaction to the defense that you just heard from Senator Vance?
It's more coherent and logical and defensible than the stuff that Donald Trump was saying. It's also just not particularly responsive to the stuff that Donald Trump was saying. It is totally fair game to go after Kamala Harris for flip-flopping and changing her positions. I welcome a lot of her flip-flops. She's moving to the correct positions from the wrong positions. But Donald Trump went out there and said she's not black based upon this completely sort of retconned, manufactured past. You know, when Jim Clyburn said you have to pick a black woman, and Joe Biden said I'm going to pick a black woman, and then he picked Kamala Harris, no one said, wait a second, she's not black, she's Indian, right? I mean, like Donald Trump didn't say that. Nobody said that. What Vance is doing fairly effectively there, I think, is changing the subject to something that's actually a defensible political argument rather than what Trump actually did.
It does. I mean, that argument did come at the expense of defending his own family's racial identity, and I'm not sure
Wasn't
how
think
you're
it was ideal.
Right? I don't know how you talk to your biracial children and tell them that you can't be all things to all people. You get to choose in a setting of black people that you can connect with that community using code.
Can you unpack that infamous pig of Jill Stein with Putin, please? What? Why? Who gives a shit? Like, what were you about to vote for Jill Stein, but then you saw her sitting down with Putin and you're like, oh, I can't do it? Like, what? The infamous photo. I'm willing to bet that that infamous photo from like 2016, 95% of chat hasn't even seen this infamous photo. What is going on right now? I'm with her. I'm voting Jill Stein.
Switching, or you can wear a different set of clothes when you're with Indian American families and communities. Like that's a great way of actually being American.
If this is true.
Being able to express these multiple identities based on where you are. So even the argument of she tries to be all things to all people, again, make it about policy, but the identity piece makes her far more relatable. It also helps understand why the Trump administration was adamant about not counting identities and racial demographics within the census, and they were trying to pull that back because what the census shows is that America is a browning, it is a mixed race nation, that by 2040 that is going to be the majority of the country.
Uh-oh. Don't say that now. People are going to get scared.
And not confronting that is part of Trump's problem.
And I think what's interesting, to both your point, the back half of Senator Vance's argument there, or response there, was what every Republican would like to be talking about on a regular basis, including, I think, the co-campaign managers of former President Trump's operation. And yet, it's not like he's going to walk away from this. In fact, he's amplifying false attack on the vice president and a racial identity, posting on a social media account. This is a photo of Harris wearing a sari and a family photo today, writing, quote, "Your warmth, friendship, and love of your Indian heritage are very much appreciated." I mean, J.D. Vance has a photo of himself in traditional Indian wear at his wedding to his wife. I don't know, what are we doing here?
Right. No, I mean, it's a completely idiotic line of attack, but it also underscores the fact that the Trump campaign, having been given all the time in the world to prepare for the possibility of Harris as the Democratic nominee, apparently hasn't come up with a focused and disciplined line of attack to make against her. They can't decide. Do they want to go after her as a flip-flopper? Do they want to go after her as too far left? Or now, do they want to go after her on, I think, the least promising possible grounds and the most morally odious, the way that she lives out her race?
But is that, I mean, if you watch their ads, and if you listen to what Senator Vance said in the back half of that response, like, it feels like they know, and they feel like they have a message that they can land on and really work after searching for a little bit. And it's not them. It's him.
Yeah, I mean, look, the ads are focused so far on immigration. I've seen some ads focus on the economy. A month ago, I think I even saw some ads, I think in North or South Carolina, targeting younger black men. So the campaign, from an operational perspective, I would argue they're doing everything right.
It's got the discrete issues.
It does. The candidate, the guy at the top.
Not just. It also doesn't have an overall narrative about the other candidates.
Well, that's right. Yeah. They're not drawing that contrast for that 4 or 5% of people in the middle. Some of those moderate-leaning R's, or some of those swing voters who may have voted for Republicans in the past, who are sort of on the fence. The more you racialize this, in my opinion, I think you push those individuals further away. You look at some of the metrics so far. Kamala Harris is slowly improving. It's about, 90-plus days to go. She can continue to steadily increase those numbers. And I think if you're not drawing the contrast, you're not talking about the issues, the economy, immigration, cost of living from a Republican perspective, and begging that question about, well, why is she flip-flopping all over the place? You're not winning, Phil.
Right? And one thing we've seen, when we see this with Vance, you can go out and say, well, actually, Trump meant to say this. We saw this all during
It's like 4 years of covering Congress.
And then Trump is just going to come back and say the thing he actually said again. And you're going to look more foolish for having made this kind of sophistical defense. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris, I think, loves this story. I don't think that she has any
her
difficulty.
entire answer was, come say it to my face, which plays into the whole debate her argument. Like that.
Asian people on CNN. Oh my God. Yeah, this is the most Asian panel I've ever seen. They're eating good today. Like, they were like, let's put together the most Asian panel we can get together. Is this actually the most diverse panel that I've ever seen on CNN? Rise up, Asians. All right. I don't know why, but my Wired magazine article is out. And it's like in print. So it's kind of hard to fucking actually find the article itself. This is the Wired magazine Middle East. And we got some photos from it too. And it's pretty funny because like I had the mustache in these photos when I was doing the photo shoot, and it makes me look so much more Turkish. I realize. Like, it makes me look the most Turkish. One thing that I'm sad about, though, is that there was one photo that I was very excited and I thought they would post it because it's like it was a hard one to fucking take, and they didn't even fucking post it, which I'm kind of bummed by. It's going to get worse when you're older. Journalists, what's going to get worse? But yeah, we got some photos back from it. Are you saying I'm going to look more Turkish when I get older? You could be the guy in those Turkish Airlines mini movies you watch at every takeoff. I love Turkish Airlines, by the way. What did the photo they didn't use look like? It was sick. It was me jumping. We faked it on a trampoline when I wasn't even actually jumping on the trampoline. But instead, I was actually jumping with a laptop in hand. The close-up one was insane. I was just very stoked that like all of this like designer shit that they made me wear fit me. Is this the close-up one that's insane? Did they style you? Yeah. No, this was like a legit photo shoot. This one I look the most Turkish, bro. Look at this. I look like a Turkish unk. Here's the interview. Hasan Piker, widely known as HasanAbi Online, is a prominent Turkish-American streamer and political commentator born in 1991. Hasan Piker has made a name for himself through his Twitch streams where he discusses politics, news, social issues, and current events. His background includes roles as a broadcast journalist and producer for the Young Turks and columnist at HuffPost. Known for his left-wing perspectives, Piker blends gaming and serious discourse, aiming to both educate and entertain his diverse audience. I love how this motherfucker turned up the Arab 90% as soon as he heard Wired Middle East. Bro, I did not. I don't know why it looked like that. I don't know why I look so like Turkish uncle coded. Isn't that crazy? Like this photo, I look like I did like a RCTA, race change to Arab. I don't know why. I have never looked this Turkish. I don't think. I do not think I have ever looked this Turkish in my life, dude. They hit you with the Arab gun? Yeah. Anyway. You're Ariana Grande? Well, I am Turkish, so it's not like it's that out of pocket. Eti Mesut'te minibüs hattım varmış gibi çıkmışsın. This one is kind of lame. I'm not gonna lie. I think there were probably better photos. But yeah. Like, this is the most Turkish I've ever looked, I think, in my life. Oh, you can see her diapers because she was on her period. Yo. Embarrassing. What do you have to say for yourself? Huh? We got your diapers on fucking Wired Magazine Middle East. She don't give a fuck. Bro, your mustache is an entirely different shape. Literally you? What is this? Burak Özcivit, come on, bro. This dude is way hotter than me. Are you kidding me? Diaper in a magazine photo. That's Brad Summer. Did you glue a fake mustache? What? No, man. This is continuing the trend of streamers and magazines holding random tech. I know. It was a little different. This was Vogue. Get her spayed. What are you doing? She's a large dog. He has a way to avoid hip issues and other stuff. It's recommended by his vet, not a random Twitch chatter. Thank you. I feel like I've read this I've repeated this so many fucking times that like people literally know now. My favorite are these photos though, these two. I love this photo. This photo's fire. This photo's awesome. Even though, like I said, it makes me look so fucking Turkish. Like I need to be holding a tesbih. Like this photo, I can see myself holding a tesbih in this photo. It's just, they just like photoshopped it out. Cigarette in one hand or chai. Okay. Tavşan kanı. The blood of a rabbit. Tea in one hand and tesbih prayer beads in the other. You look like a 4.67 star Uber driver. Kahvehanede beni cat kollayacakmışsın gibi duruyor. All right, let's read the article. Carla Cerdan, you've built yourself a pretty large audience across socials. Why turn to social media as a way to reach people? I think that given the confines of acceptability in mainstream politics, I don't necessarily fit that role. I don't necessarily fit the ideology that's permissible under neoliberal politics in general. The leftmost position in those circumstances is oftentimes going to be the modern Democratic Party, plus some socially very radically progressive opinions on certain things. The internet has allowed someone like myself to exist. I can thrive and even be a competitive voice to mainstream voices. On that front, I think is great. The democratization of information dissemination is great. It's awesome. He pauses. I said a lot of shin words. I hate that. Does that democratization ever come into conflict with what you're doing? Everyone has a voice now. So there's a lot of clutter, a lot of chaos online, and a lot of information that isn't factual. How do you cut through that noise? You nailed it. This is why it's a double-edged sword. This is the other side of the issue, where I think some people take advantage of this democratization. And maybe some might even say that I do that. A lot of people take advantage and become grifters. They promote misinformation specifically because they want to hawk a product or sell something else. That is truly damaging to the discourse. The point is, we do not have media literacy in general. We didn't have good media literacy even when we only had 8 different TV channels and maybe 20 newspapers. The unfortunate reality is that we haven't even begun to broach critical media analysis in the internet era. That is a massive issue. The other thing I try to explain to people is like, I'm holding your hand through this media journey. I'm holding your hand. My job, the way I see it, is to hold the hands of an audience through the experience of going through the New York Times, going to Al Jazeera and all these other websites, reading the articles, and sometimes reading through the lines, because they're oftentimes under the guise of objectivity. There's a lot that gets omitted. I also often have a policy of not covering breaking news. I'll try to address when something is developing and try to explain to people, like, we should take a breather. We should sit back and wait for proper verification from mainstream outlets. Where is it that people are struggling the most in your view? In the broadest sense, the biggest issue is that there's a lot of distrust in mainstream media. There's a lot of distrust from the average person. There are valid reasons to be critical, but there's also a lot of invalid reasons to be critical. The female dog spaying getting hip dysplasia is a wives' tale, by the way. Yeah, no, my vet is actually spreading wives' tales, and every vet that I've ever been to, because it's not even the female dog spaying. I had a male dog that was pretty large, and my vet said the exact same thing back then as well. Different vet. Whenever there are life-changing events that are happening, like globally important phenomena that the media is covering in real time, depending on their built-in biases, depending on the volatility, depending on whatever the feeling of instability causes, a lot of people to completely write off these outlets that are supposed to be unifying, at least in the way of disseminating truths that are supposed to help us. Another part of that is the move towards infotainment, not just mainstream media, but even for players such as yourself. How do you balance medium and message? I see a lot of value in what I do, in being entertaining, because my perspective is not one that is often represented in mainstream outlets. I want to ensure that I'm reaching as broad of an audience as possible. That means doing collaborations and tapping into new audiences that normally would not be familiar with who I am, and then trying to present them with an alternative view that they have maybe never been privy to, or even explaining to them parts of American history or global history that they've never really thought about. Entertainment plays a big role in what I do for sure. This doesn't mean that everyone could do what I do. If everyone was doing this, then there would be no real objective news, there would be no journalists, and no investigative reporting. I always value journalistic outlets. I always value what mainstream media is there to do. You've been outspoken about Gaza. Have you seen a change in attitude or perception towards Palestine? Absolutely. I've been an outspoken advocate for Palestinian emancipation for the past 10 years professionally in my media career. There is more momentum for Palestinian emancipation in the Western world, especially in our demographic, in the under 35-year-old age group. I've never seen such strong, continued, resilient support for Palestinian emancipation in my entire life. I never, ever in a million years would think that there would be hundreds of thousands of people protesting in the West. In the immediate aftermath of October 7, I lost a big chunk of my community. I lost, I would say, a third of my community. In the past 9 months, I think that even the original naysayers and extremely critical people have arrived at the same conclusions as me. I think there was parts of it where I said, obviously, that's nothing in comparison to the lives lost in Gaza, but I guess they cut a bunch of stuff out because I was yapping. Why is there such a pronounced difference, particularly online? It's social media in general. I think that social media, especially TikTok, shows the Palestinian experience directly from the mouth of the Palestinians and automatically humanizes them, like people like Bazan and Motaz. People see that on TikTok. They see the death and violence and the destruction, everything that you normally don't see on CNN, or things that you see on CNN that get immediate contextualization from someone with a clear agenda. That is the normal modus operandi in the way that the American public has heard about Israel. Social media has completely changed that dynamic, where you have thousands of people that just have phone cameras and eSIMs and are just regularly recording and explaining their immediate conditions to hundreds of millions of people. That directly runs counter to whatever narrative that mainstream media tries to cultivate. An analog I have used in this situation is that social media doesn't have the capacity to genuinely make change, but it does have the capacity to motivate mainstream media, television and newspapers, magazines, to actually cover issues in a thorough manner without omitting key details. I think that level of scrutiny pushes mainstream outlets to provide significantly better, significantly more truthful coverage. If there are a lot of people that are saying, why aren't you covering this? They have to cover it because otherwise they're losing an entire generation of people and their power is diminished. And I don't know if I want their power to diminish. In times of need, I think that it's important to have trusted resources. I guess the cliche is when someone is saying that it's raining outside and another party is saying it's sunny outside, the job of the news is not to report on both sides of those things. Their job is to open the window and peek out. Someone needs to peek out. We can't just rely on user-generated content to cover these stories. This was in Wired Middle East. No, not GQ Middle East. It was Wired Middle East. This is peak lib cope. What? There's never been a moment in my life where I've said that mainstream media is unnecessary. I would not be able to do what I do without mainstream media, without actual journalists. I have friends that are working at these outlets. I have trusted sources that I rely on that work at these outlets. How many people will see/read this? I mean, what, 33,000 people just did.